All right, welcome again to international trade. So we are pretty much just going to be talking in brief about what we already started last week. So I think now that I provided notes of my own, then I think we can basically just make reference to those notes. So these notes, like any other of these notes that I provide, you just need to read them at least a minimum of 3 times, then you are sorted on that. So the starting point again is what we discussed, the mercantilist view on trade. So here, just take note of what these guys believed in terms of exports and imports. Just take note of that, and then special emphasis should be made on that they believe that trade is a zero-sum game. I did say that most of the questions that you will get around this will most likely be talking about how trade is a zero-sum game according to the mercantilist view. There, nothing deep on that. And then this here in blue in a different shade, these are adopted, by the way, from the textbook, right? So I'm just saving you time from going through the textbook, and some of the things there we are not really part of our scope there. So I'm handpicking what's important for us. So what's in the blue, I think that's blue there, is important for our understanding to see how, in as much as these are theories that were, theories that were believed in a couple of years back, like centuries ago, I need you to realize how this is still, still at play even in the modern day society. So that's what's written there in blue. And then I also thought about including the trade war, the recent trade war between the United States and China. I thought of including that there, but it's fine. But it was really gonna be interesting for the sake of discussion to see how trade, after so many years, we even have the World Trade Organization, but trade is not really free, right? Even though we are advocating for free trade. And then realize again that Adam Smith on the theory of absolute advantage was basically responding to the mercantilist view. So Adam Smith, what's important about him, besides our understanding of what absolute advantage is, we just need to understand that trade, he says trade is not a zero-sum game. And in order for countries to trade, both countries will have to benefit from such an engagement. So what we are going to be doing today, we'll be looking at the numericals for absolute advantage as well as the relative advantage, right? The one by David Ricardo, comparative advantage. And then I will point out here again, I think the rest of everything you can just go through the notes here. Let me not preempt that. But there is something that I particularly realized when it comes to our markers here at UNISA. So there's a distinction between the law of comparative advantage and the law, and the last one here, the law of opportunity cost. They are quite different there, though they basically explain the same thing, right? So the issue was, I think we had an assignment that we did, and the assignment was asking us to talk about the law of comparative advantage, and of which we did that. And I particularly provided that assignment where we spoke about the law of comparative advantage. So with the law of comparative advantage, you are basically going to be looking at, where comparing between two countries and then looking at where the country has the highest absolute advantage, right, compared to the other country. And under those circumstances, you say that country has a comparative advantage in terms of one product where it actually has the highest absolute advantage, and then we would refer to that as comparative advantage. I think we will deal with that on the question that we are going to do now. And then another way of picking out a comparative advantage would be to use the theory of opportunity cost. So why the theory of opportunity cost came about was because the theory of comparative advantage used the labor theory of value. right? They use the labor theory of value in their explanations, of which the labor theory of value was debunked, right? It simply doesn't work. There are notes on that here why the labor theory of value does not work. So as a result of that, came about the opportunity cost theory as an explanation. Then the opportunity cost theory, on the other hand, basically compares the opportunity costs between two products, right? In your production of two products, and you say you have a comparative advantage if on the product where your opportunity cost is lowest, right? Where your opportunity cost is lowest, that's where you have your comparative advantage. So the problem that we had now there on the assignment, they were specifically asking us to do under the law, under David Ricardo, the law of comparative advantage. But the explanation that they gave on their solution was the explanation of opportunity cost, where I had a problem on that. So now it's a bit difficult to know which one to put and which one not to put, you see. Because at the end of the day, though they both arrive at the same conclusion, but if you ask me about the law of comparative advantage, then I take you to what David Ricardo said. And if you ask me about the law of opportunity cost or the theory of opportunity cost, then I take you to the opportunity cost the way we know it. So that's where the issue was. But other than that, just go through these notes there. And if you have any issues, I think they're going to be straightforward, these notes. But most importantly, this is what we will get in an exam. Let me share an exam script there, and then we discuss this. So I asked the other girl to send a paper in the group there. So we're going to check that paper. I think we might just start with that. Right. I haven't really checked it, but okay, no, this is not it. I haven't really checked that one, but all right, this is February 27. All right, not quite that one, but we will in any case end with that one. Let's take the other one. I want to see what's on the other one, because I'm hoping that we get something on the theory of absolute advantage and then we jump, because this one that we did a few days back, it's about comparative advantage. All right, there we go. All right, so this is basically how the questions are going to be. Right, so we're going to start this off on question 1B right there. All right, so this is pretty straightforward. So we are dealing here with absolute advantage. So my hopes are being fulfilled. So consider the following hypothetical scenario of two countries, Zambia and Senegal. Assume the following: there are two products, oil and maize. Consumers in both countries desire both goods. The goods are homogeneous. So meaning consumers in either country cannot differentiate between oil and maize from either country, right? And then labor is the only factor of production available. So you can already see now that if we are going to be talking about the labor theory of value, then we are talking about those two guys, Adam Smith and David Ricardo. Right? Their theories were based on labor being the only factor of production, right? So you are given a table. So we normally get these tables, by the way, in these questions. So you get a table. So which country has an absolute advantage? So remember, we said when we talk of absolute advantage, we're saying which country is more efficient in the production of a certain commodity than the other. That's what we mean there by an absolute advantage. So in this instance, watch out now, because you are looking at the hours per barrel, right? The hours per barrel, right? So this can be pretty confusing. So these questions can either be output based or input based. So if it's output based, of which most are usually output based, you are going to be looking at the numbers, trying to see which one can produce more per hour, right? I think on our next example, we are gonna see that there, right? Which one can produce more per hour? That's what we are gonna be looking at there. But in this instance, we are looking at the number of hours per barrel. So what hours are we talking about? We're talking about labor hours, because we're saying we're assuming that labor is the only factor of production. So if in Zambia, it takes them 1 hour to produce 1 barrel of oil, while in Senegal, it takes them 2 hours to produce 1 barrel of oil. This tells us that Zambia is more efficient in the production of oil than Senegal, right? Why? Because it takes Zambia less time to produce 1 barrel than Senegal. So Senegal takes 2, while Zambia takes 1. So just be careful of that, that there. I think in the particular assignment where there were a lot of disputes, they had actually made a mistake. You see now where it's written table 1, worker hours per good. There they'd written output per excuse me, output per labor hour. So it was conflicting information there. You see. But in any case, to err is human, right? So you need to be watching out for that. So before you jump into conclusion, check the description of the table, what they are talking about. So if they are talking about barrels per hour, then Senegal will be more efficient because it will be producing more barrels per hour. But in this instance, they are saying hours per barrel, right? So meaning Zambia takes 1 hour to produce a barrel, while Senegal takes 2 hours to produce a barrel. So Senegal is taking them a lot longer. So it means they are not so efficient there. So we can conclude, therefore, that Zambia has an absolute advantage in producing oil. What is our explanation? That's the explanation that I just gave. Because Zambia uses less labor hours to produce a barrel of oil. Right? Then which country has an absolute advantage in producing maize? Then we can do the same analysis there. So Zambia, it takes them 4 hours to make a barrel of maize, while Senegal, it only takes them 1 hour. So Senegal is more efficient there, right? So sometimes you are not just required to talk about the absolute advantage. We even go a step further to say Senegal has an absolute disadvantage. Why? Because they are inefficient there, right? I think it's there on the notes, right? And then we will do the same there again for maize. Zambia is inefficient compared to Senegal. So if you want to talk about the patterns of trade now, then you would expect that what Adam Smith was basically advocating for is that the country should specialize in the product that they are, or in the commodity that they are more efficient in producing, right? And then exchange it for the other. What are the benefits of that? The benefits are there in the notes, right? So the benefits are going to include, obviously, an increase in world welfare, right? Which is what we're interested in. If you're going to be looking at this from the perspective of the World Trade Organization, right? Not from a country's perspective. But of course, again, from the country's perspective, you always gain. All right, so assume Zambia and Senegal each have 100 worker hours. Illustrate using a similar output, using a similar table as above, the output of each product there. All right. So assuming that Senegal and Zambia has got 100 worker hours there, then we are asking ourselves now the question, okay, in other words, if you have 100 hours of labor and good A requires 1 hour of labor to produce 1 unit, how many units of A can be produced using 100 hours? So they even went on to simplify that and explain that there. So it's very simple now. So which means our new table there is gonna have, so if we have 100 hours at our disposal, and then if we're gonna take those 100 hours of labor, and then we put them on oil, how many barrels can we come up with there? It's obviously gonna be 100. Then on the other one, it's gonna be 200, and then on the maize, it's gonna be 400. Then there it's gonna be 100. So that's basic math on that one there. So that was quite straightforward. All right, so using the figures indicated there in 3 illustrates the quantities each country can produce on its own in a product possibility frontier. All right, so I don't know if you guys remember okay, Jasper, I see your hand is raised there. Just unmute yourself.
Hello, Ntando, how are you?
I'm all right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
I'm good, thank you. I'm so very sorry I'm late. I was driving. There was a bit of traffic, so I had to come back late.
No problem.
I'm so no excuse about that, but I just want to say sorry for that. I see you. I don't know when you have started, but I'm trying to follow you as you go along. So the question that I must say I have is only based on the calculations, because I don't seem to see the method of the calculations or the formulas that you're currently using.
All right.
I don't know, maybe if it's also part of the structure.
All right. Should I, okay, but 1 and 2, are you okay with 1 and 2? The absolute advantage in producing oil and maize. Or you want us to start it off from there?
Yeah, so maybe I would say, because I know this one, it's very challenging. It's going to be easy maybe if you do the explanation, and then we could pretend like we hear. But come the exam times, so we will have to do those calculations and show them. It's going to be a challenge if we don't know those formulas and the usage of how you get to the answers.
All right. No, let's just pick it up from the top there. So in terms of, all right. So what I was saying, we should look at now on as of table 1 there. We are trying to get the country that has an absolute advantage in the production either of oil or of maize, right? That's what we're trying to do there. So under normal circumstances, if you're going to be dealing with absolute advantage, you are basically looking at the country that is more efficient in producing a certain product. So there are 2 ways in which it can be efficient. Either in producing, you can either look at it this way, either they can produce more using fewer inputs, right? So this is going to be input based, or else they can generally use fewer inputs. So it depends on what the question, from which perspective the question is taking us. Sometimes you can look at it in the instance where it's going to be using fewer inputs to arrive at the same output as the other countries, which is the case here. So you're only looking at the output of 1 barrel, but then you realize that Zambia, in producing 1 barrel of oil, only uses 1 hour, while Senegal is using more time. So hence we're saying Senegal is inefficient there. And then with maize, Zambia is inefficient because they require 4 hours to make a barrel of maize, while in Senegal it's only 1 hour. So that's going to be question part 1 and part 2 answered. Then when we go to part 3 now, where they are saying, suppose now we have 100 hours, 100 worker hours, right? Plot now, or in other words, tell us the production that we can get from 100 hours, or write down for us the production that we can get per 100 hours for each commodity that's given there and for every one of those countries. So what you basically do there, you take those 100 hours and you say, okay, so in Zambia, 1 hour produces 1 barrel. What about 100 hours? So it's going to be 1 times 100. So that's going to produce for us 100 barrels. Then in Senegal now, 1 hour, okay. Then in Senegal now, 2 hours produces 1 barrel. So 100 hours is going to produce what? So it's supposed to be 100 divided by 2 there, right? I think I said it wrong the first time actually. So it's going to be 100 divided by 2, which is going to give us 50 barrels. So from that now we can see that Zambia can produce 100 given the same 100 hours, right, can produce 100 barrels, while Senegal can only produce 50 barrels because it takes them twice the time, right? And then in the same token, we do the same for maize. So in terms of hours now, it takes us 4 hours to produce 1 barrel, right? Now that we have 100 hours, how many can we do? Then we can do the division again. It's gonna be 100 divided by 4, which is gonna give us 25 there. And then on the other side there, it's gonna be 100. Yes.
Is it that this question requires the calculation there, Ntando?
Yes, on the it's the part 3. It says assume. So in other words, if you have, all right, illustrate using a similar table the output of each of the product. So it's always good to show that calculation there. But in terms of calculation,
Yes, that I think that will be good.
Yes, you are merely just gonna be putting in brackets. On the first one, it's gonna be 1 times 100. Then on the next one, it's gonna be 100 divided by 2. And then on the next one, it's gonna be 100
is it possible? I don't know, maybe if I'm troubling you, is it possible that you can show us the calculation as we explain?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I think I did not let you know that I lost my laptop, so I'm unable to write now at the moment. I think I'll be able to write next week. So I think I announced in the group that just get a pen and the paper so you can write this down. But I have the solution for this, right? Because we did this last year. I have the solution for this, so I can say it anytime.
Yes, yes.
I'll just have a look at it and then share it.
No problem, no problem. I was not aware you lost the computer. What happened? They stole it.
I was marked at gunpoint. So I was actually just moving from one building to another. I had a laptop there. So they
Thanks goodness you're alive, man.
Yeah. And all the things. Remember last semester we used to teach and write.
Yes, that was great last semester.
Yeah, but we'll sort this out. I think first week of March, we'll be able to sort that out. But again, the good thing is we don't have much calculations here on this module. It's not much calculation, so we will see. But I'm gonna provide this again, but do go through it so that you can, after I've provided the solution, you can see whether or not you were lost there on that one, together with the PPF curve on that one. So on the PPF curve now, you need to decide which one goes on the x-axis and which one goes on the y-axis for the two products. But PPF curve, this one is giveaway marks also. So remember, in terms of PPF curve now, what you need to watch out for is, let's say we establish now that Zambia is producing 100 barrels while Senegal is producing 50. So which means on the PPF curve, if you're gonna put your oil on the y-axis, then your Zambia must stop at 100 while your Senegal must stop at 50, right? And then when you do again on the x-axis, maize, if you're gonna put maize on the x-axis, then you say it's 25 for Zambia, and then it must go and stop at 25 there. So you're basically plotting 25 on the x-axis and 100 on the y-axis. And then for Senegal, it's gonna be 50 and 100. And then you just join those 2 points. So you remember how PPF curve looks like. I think it's bowl shaped, like. But I'm gonna show that to you. Yeah, I'm gonna show that one to you anyway. But that's it here on absolute advantage. So absolute advantage is straightforward. You're basically looking at the one that's producing much more. So that's also gonna be reflected on the PPF curves, on the country's PPF curves there. Which one? So in other words, where the PPF curve gets bigger, right? It's where they have an absolute advantage there. But let's look at the other question now on relative advantage. Let's check that one out. It's on the right, what we wrote. today. All right, so this one now needs again a pen and a paper, right? Needs a pen and a paper. So they are saying two countries, P and T. Let me blow this up. Just for Max, so on the first one, nothing complicated there. P and T are two hypothetical countries. Both countries have the same amount of resources and time. Pandora can produce 60 tons of cement per hour. You see now the focus is different. Now we are looking at production per hour. They were looking at the number of hours per barrel. You see where it gets tricky. So you need to be careful on that. You need to read be careful. So read the question carefully there. So Pandora can produce 60 tons of cement per hour and 50 tons of machines per hour. So which means they have 60-50, right? And then Tenkin can produce 20 tons of cement and 30 tons of machine hours right there. So now you just need to represent that now on a diagram, right? So I think to save time now, I'm just going to share that part. I'm just going to share. Right. Let me just check that there. All right. You need that one. Right. Just give me a second. I'm just looking for that there because I just converted the file to PDF. All right, there we go. Now we can have it. Oh, okay. This is not sharing. All right, just give me a second again. I just need to share that solution. See these questions. Probably oops, you see how bad my handwriting is, why I normally type. People usually used to complain about my bad handwriting, and I ended up typing.
So are we going to have the products on the left-hand side and the countries on top? I think I'm making that up in my mind now.
You are right. Yes, you are right. We should have that there. You see the way it looked there. Okay, let me get it from someone. Or does any of you guys here have their WhatsApp open so I can send to them? And then you can resend to me so I can be able to access it here on this Zoom thing.
What do we need? You need us to share what again?
I want to share this question, this answer sheet here.
Okay, I am online, so.
Okay, you are online. Now I can't tell
Yes.
who's talking.
Oh, it's Piwe. It's Piwe Club.
I've got my screen switched off. Right, there you go. So I sent you that there. Please just resend it to me, then I will.
Do I resend it to the group or yourself again?
Just to me. Because this one is just for the discussion here.
Did that work?
So what you're saying is right. All right, let me know if you sent it through.
I've sent it, yes. I'll just forward it back to you. That's what you asked, right?
Yeah, perfect. All right, let me just check that now.
Hey, but Ntando, going back to that previous question, now I was lost because we were multiplying those 100 hours with what we had. Now you were saying we're dividing. So just before you end the session. Can you go back, please?
Okay, so basically there,
Mm.
okay, let me see if I share that one again. Basically, it's proportions there, right? It's proportions. So it doesn't matter how you look at it. Let me just share.
Sorry for jumping you up and down. Sorry, but it was just somewhere in my mind.
Right, let me go back to it there. All right, so if we're gonna be doing 100 hours, so
Yes.
why here multiplication and division won't make much of a difference is that 1 barrel can basically produce, I'm sorry, you can use 1 hour to produce 1 barrel.
Yes.
100 hours will instead give you what?
100.
100.
Yes. It will give you 100
Yeah.
barrels. Yes.
It will give you 100 barrels. So you can get that simply by multiplying. So it's simple because we are dealing with one and one there.
Yes.
So it's simple. But when we shift to Senegal now, we realize that it's 2 divided by the barrels there. Right. So it's 2 hours to produce. It's 2 hours to produce 1 barrel.
Okay.
1 barrel of
okay.
oil.
Yes. So if 2 hours is taking us, sorry, if it takes 2 hours to produce 1 barrel, what about if we have 100 hours? How many barrels can we produce?
100.
So now it can't be 200 now. Why? Because 1 barrel, it takes us 2 hours to produce. You understand?
Do we divide then so that it gives us 50?
Yes.
Yes.
We divide. So in other words, what you should bear in mind is that we use more time there to produce 1.
Mm.
So which means if we are going to be given the same amount of hours, you can't produce more for Senegal
More.
because they're inefficient, those ones.
Oh, we need to produce less.
Yes. They are taking
Yes.
that, these ones. So there is that division there.
So with maize,
So, and
we'll
then
say,
for
okay, excuse me.
for Zambia to produce, for Zambia to produce maize, so they spend 4 hours. So, which means we have to do what, to multiply, or do we
No.
also follow the same procedure?
Same
I
procedure.
believe we must divide,
divide.
because yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So the only way in which multiplication would have worked here is when you factored in that it's 1/4.
1 over 4, 1/2.
Yes, times a quarter times a half.
Mm.
Because these ones are less efficient, so you expect that they should produce less with the given time.
So which means when we look at Zambia, we will say they've got absolute advantage on producing oil because they spend less hour compared to Senegal.
Yes, less
And
hour.
then when you go on to Senegal, they are more efficient on producing maize compared to Zambia. So, which means they have to produce maize. This is Senegal needs to produce maize, and therefore Zambia needs to produce oil.
True. Yes. Perfect. Like that. So if it's now in terms of production, then you must expect that Senegal can produce more maize, right? Because they take less time. So they are faster. So if you give them the same amount of time, they'll produce more. You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you go to India, they are faster in producing oil, so they are gonna produce.
They are faster. Okay. Okay.
So let's jump to that one now. Let's see on the other one. Right. So this is how the information is gonna be represented there. Right. So where you have Pandora doing 60 and 50 there, and then Tenkin doing 20 and 30. So now they say indicates the product of absolute advantage and disadvantage for each country. So remember, we say it's the one that's producing more is an absolute advantage. So you go to Siemens there and you check Pandora is producing 60 while Tenkin is producing 20. So Pandora has an absolute advantage. Tenkin is what? An absolute disadvantage. Right. Then you go down again and you look at the machines. What's happening there on the machines? Pandora is doing 50 while Tenkin is doing 30. So it simply means Pandora has an absolute advantage again there. So now this is different from the question that we're doing there, because now under the,
so Pandora has got absolute advantage on producing machine over
Yes.
Tenkin.
yes.
Okay, makes sense.
So they've got an advantage over all of them now, 60 and 50. So what the question simply wants us to do now is to just talk about that, who has an absolute advantage and who has an absolute disadvantage. And then we state our reason. So our reason is that Pandora can produce more cement in 1 hour than Tenkin. Then they can also produce more machines in 1 hour than Tenkin. So it means they are more efficient in their production there. Right.
So, Tenkin must just give up.
So now if you take the notes when we talk about the theory of this one here, relative advantage. So relative advantage is also called the theory of comparative advantage, right? So I keep switching those words. It's basically the same thing, right? So they say compute. Okay, sorry, let me just take this call a second. Okay, so sorry about that. Lebo, I see you've got your hand up there.
Oh, yes. Hi, everyone. Okay.
Hi, Lebo.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'm a bit confused, but I just want to check what is the difference between the question that we have now and the previous one? Because the previous one, it seemed as if the country that had a higher amount in terms of per hour, in terms of their production, seemed to be more disadvantaged. And in this case, Pandora is producing more cement and more machines per hour, and it seems to be the one that is advantaged. So what is the difference in this case?
Wow. Interesting. That's a good question, because
Hey, that's a I'm just laughing. That's a very good question. Eh?
yes. Right, let's go back to that one again and assess it. So on this one here, Lebo, they are saying you are looking at hours per barrel. So you are looking at the labor hours per barrel. So this is, they call these ones input questions. So it's not, but that one was output per labor hour. That's the difference. So it's been inverted, kind of like, hence that's why it was opposing. So which means what this one means here is workers per good. So which means we need worker hours per good. So it means for Zambia, it takes them 1 hour to produce, let's say, one output of oil, while Senegal, it takes them 2 hours. So it simply means that for them to produce the same thing, the same quantity, Zambia takes less time than Senegal. You see, so which means that these ones are which ones are efficient and which ones are not efficient. Then it means Zambia is more efficient than Senegal. It's like
Senegal is also more efficient because they consume less hours compared to Zambia that produces the maize by spending 4 hours. So I understand that part very well. But the question that she asked How
Mhm.
how do these two things become different now? Because when you go on the other side, you have got the advantage because on the other countries they're producing both products on the higher amounts or higher values.
Yes. Yes. So remember the last calculation that we did there on 3. The output Zambia had 100 for oil, Senegal had 50. So it's now the same as the other question. You see now.
Yeah, that question is still baffling me because now when I look at it, it's not specific or specified. Maybe for me to understand well, maybe if I put it in draft, I have better understanding. But if someone is explaining, like on question number 23, it becomes a bit different.
Yeah, because if you what you must consider now is if you have the same number of hours, like in this case, they are saying if you have got 100 worker hours, how much of oil will you produce? Now that you know that Zambia is more efficient, we can see that Zambia with those same hours, they can produce 100. But Senegal, because they take twice as much time to produce 1 unit, which means they can only produce half of that. So which is only 50. So now it's gonna be 150 for the oil. And then for the maize, it's gonna be 25 and 100, which now is gonna be looking exactly like this one.
So it's like 100 divided by 4, 100 divided by 2.
Yes.
And then
so now you
the
see,
answer?
So the difference now is cement per hour. You see, there it would have been hours, labor hours. Remember on that question, it's hours per barrel. But in this instance, we're dealing with what? Cement
Product.
per hour.
The product.
So, Ntando, so
Yes.
the difference becomes that the other one you calculate on the basis of labor and this on the basis of a product.
Yes. So it's basically the first one is based on input. So it's like if you are writing an exam and you are putting less effort than the other person, your input is less, so hence you are better off. Which means you can write more exams with the given short time, right? That's the input-based question, the one that we did earlier. So we are saying it's like if you are doing a project, if you can do a project quicker, then you are more efficient. It also means on the other side, you can do more than the other person with the given. So you can see that in this instance, they are all given 1 hour, but Pandora is producing more. But they are both given 1 hour.
But here on the question 1A, we're talking about the cement per hour. What does it mean? Producing 1 cement per hour.
So it says tons. I think the unit is tons. Like 1 ton of cement
per hour.
Pandora can produce 60 tons of cement per hour, while Tunkim can produce 20 tons of cement per hour. So Pandora has an absolute advantage in that regard.
Yes. That's perfect. So what Lebo is asking there is very important because these questions, if we rush to answering them, we will not realize what it's actually saying there. So we need to assess them and see whether we are looking at this from terms of hours or we're looking at it in terms of output straight up. So we need to, yeah.
Yes, and I have another follow-up question. So
yes,
to simplify it, for whenever we calculate for an input, it means we have to multiply, and then for the outputs, we then divide.
I wouldn't exactly say there's a rule book on that. I wouldn't exactly say there's a rule book because it depends with what the question wants. But to simplify it, if you're going to be looking at inputs, right, the one that requires less input is an absolute advantage.
Yes.
Then if you're going to be looking at it in terms of outputs, then the one that has more output has an absolute advantage. So the questions will not always ask you to divide and multiply and what have you. But whether you divide and multiply, remember that the one that requires less input must at the end of the day have more production. than the one that requires more input. So more input basically translates to more effort, right? So if it takes you more effort to do something, then it shows inefficiency there as a country. But I must say most of the questions look like the one that we are doing now. You see, but we need to again watch out for the ones like the one that we had last semester's exam. All right, I think we will continue this next on the next session. So should I send these to the group?
Yes, Ntando, please, we need these materials. They are vital to us.
Right.
Even if you have some more materials, please do share. I'm
No
very
problem.
interested, especially with those questions that have got the answers, because they just
No
make
problem.
things easy.
No problem. All right, let me do that then now. Let me just send that now. I think I'm just about to have a power cut now. In the next minute. So
I think since last year I had a power cut.
All right, so let's meet on the next session. Bye and good night.
Bye-bye, guys. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.